So in my previous video, I talked about using the question of if you're gonna die in an X amount of time, what would you do, right? And I think that's a really good way into kind of jump starting yourself back onto your track, right? But another way to ask this comes from I believe is a technique called logotherapy from some guy whose name I have forgotten. But alas, the point stands. The question is, why don't you kill yourself today? Right? Like, why don't you, like, immediately? What is preventing you from just immediately killing yourself right now, right? And I know that sounds really dark, and I don't mean to be like anything bad. I'm not trying to promote like suicide or anything at all, of course. But it's like, because when I asked myself that question, and actually a lot of things came up that I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like, uh, I didn't realize that this was something really important to me. So it's like, if I ask that question to myself right now, I'm like, well, actually, there are a couple of things that I'm working on that I feel like could be freaking awesome if it succeeded, and I want to try my best to see it through. It's interesting. It's like a game. It's like, it's a game of your life, right? And you want to see the ending, or at least for this chapter, right? So there's definitely that, and I'm like, well, I really want to see my dad. It's been over like a year, and I really miss him, and that's out of the family, and they recently moved to Canada. I'm like, oh man, I would want to go to Canada. Like, I don't want to die before I go to Canada and see my dad, right? Well, actually, the other day I was like, I found this way to cook rice that was really delicious and really healthy, and this might sound silly, but it's like, oh wow, I want to stay alive because I want to try my recipe again and cook rice and with like broccoli and sweet potato and eat that again because it felt so good. And it's like, you find all these like big things and little things that that's really worth sticking around for. And it's kind of like I guess like a hack, or like a little, like a sneaky way to put yourself into a state of gratitude, right? Because it's like, instead of doing the whole like, what are you grateful for today? And then people do the whole like cliche, well, I'm grateful for the ability to breathe, and there's a roof over my head, and there's clean water, and it's like, yeah, that's great, but like, do you really mean those things? It's like, when you say it, but it's like, when you can get a little bit more specific, I find that's a lot more powerful. Well, I really hope you think of at least one thing, because I know you can. There's definitely something, even if it's like, oh, I can't wait to like put my head on my pillow again because it feels really nice, right? Or something. There's something that's worth sticking around for, because if not, you would not be here right now. So the fact you're watching this video means there's something there. You might not know what it is, but there is something that you want to be here for. And I find what this question does is it allows you to tap into a flow of excitement. So, one guy I really like is called Bashar, and he always says like, the ultimate formula for life essentially, it just begins with following your excitement, and doing it to the best of your abilities until you can't do it no further, right? And oftentimes we don't allow ourselves to flow into excitement, or at least for me, because maybe there's other fears or other limitations or blockages that you feel like that you're not allowed to just be in that excitement, right? So when you ask this question, all these exciting things actually pop up, right? Because the blocks are eliminated immediately, because it's like, if you have the threat of death looming immediately in immediate temporal range, then it's like, well, fuck all that shit. What do you actually want to do, man? Like, what do you want to do? And again, I kind of mentioned this in previous video, but I was saying how ultimately the fear of death is the ultimate fear, right? Because like, everything basically leads to the fear of death. So it's like, when you erase that, then it's like, well, what would you do? Now, I'm not saying to go outside and just like jack up on like crystal meth, right? That's probably not the best thing. But I hope you get my point. If you have nothing to be afraid of, if you were completely uninhibited, if you just had no choice but to do what you wanted to do, right? What would you do?